Welcome to my first video on the book of Revelation. In this video we're going to jump around a little bit, but I'm going to try to give you an overview of interpretations and some background in the book of Revelation that will be extremely useful as we jump into the text of the book itself. As we go through this book, first off, there are 5 primary viewpoints that we need to take a look at. The first one is the preterist viewpoint. And the preterist viewpoint says that John wrote this book of Revelation about the events that happened during his lifetime, ending just before the year AD 70, which would have been when the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed. Alongside that, there's also the historical viewpoint, which says the book of Revelation is completely a book of history, talking about the events that happened in the life of the early church, with just a few more at the end left to come. Close to it, there's another viewpoint called the literalist viewpoint. This viewpoint says that the book of Revelation should be interpreted literally. So, for example, we'll see this later on, that there will literally be only 144,000 people that are saved. Things like that. We're going to talk about some struggles with that and also some of the merits that that viewpoint has later on. Another viewpoint that we got to take a look at, it's called the futurist viewpoint, which says that Revelation is all prophecy. It's all things to happen in the future. This is a viewpoint held by a subset group called the premillennials. The premillennials are a group that believe that Christ is going to return and reign for 1,000 years before final judgment. The last viewpoint is the idealist viewpoint, which says the book of Revelation is all spiritual, it's all figurative, all metaphorical, and it only deals with a spiritual struggle, not a physical one. This viewpoint is held by the amillennials and the postmillennials. The amillennials believe that Christ has been reigning since his incarnation, since he came to earth the first time, that 1,000-year period. And the postmillennials believe that Christ is going to come back at some point and reign for 1,000 years whenever that happens. I have a picture on the next slide that'll help clean this up a little bit here. As you can see from the top, we have the premillennials. Right? The premillennials believe that Christ came, right, represented by the cross, that he's going to come and have a rapture where he's going to take the church to be with him, all current Christians. And then there's going to be a tribulation, some really bad things are going to happen, and he's going to come back again with the church and reign for 1,000 years. All right, that's what the premillennials believe. With the postmillennials, right, you have the time of Christ, right, his earthly ministry, and we're somewhere here in this time frame. At some point, Christ is going to come back. He's going to reign for 1,000 years, whenever that happens. Right? And finally, the amillennials, right, here's the time of Christ again, represented by the cross. Then there's a symbolic millennium coming to the last judgment. Now, this is usually the point where one of my students will pop their hand up and say, well, which one do you believe? And it's not quite as simple as that, and that becomes the struggle with taking a look at Revelation like this, is a lot of people try to pigeonhole it into one of these 5 viewpoints, and you really can't do that. Because there is some history that you find in the book of Revelation. There is a lot of prophecy you find there. There is a lot of discussion about the spiritual and metaphorical struggles that happen between God and Satan. So really you need to take the best of each of these viewpoints, combine it together, and that should be the lens by which you take a look at this book of Revelation. So let's switch gears real quick. Who wrote the book of Revelation? Well, the book of Revelation was written by the Apostle John, who was exiled on Patmos somewhere around the year 96 AD. According to some church traditions, it happened in the picture you see on the slide there. That supposedly is the cave where John had his revelation. According to John, it probably happened on a Sunday after church. The Lord took him up in the Spirit, showed him what was to come to encourage him and get the message out to the church. Let's switch gears again. I know, I told you it's going to happen. We're going to be hitting a lot of different things in a short amount of time here. So, important things for you to know. Themes of apocalyptic literature, because that's what the book of Revelation is. It's a book about the apocalypse, right? The things that are coming for us. The first thing you need to know is that apocalyptic literature, like the book of Revelation, is a book about the end times. That's what eschatology is. That's what eschatological means. It's just a discussion about the end times. Apocalyptic literature is also symbolic in nature. It uses symbolic language, which means things are seen in pictures and numbers, images. It's usually thought that these guys are trying to describe the indescribable, where our language can't fully articulate what it is that they're seeing, and so they try to show us using pictures and images and the like. Apocalyptic literature is prophetic. That means that it deals with the foretelling of future events. It's also cataclysmic, meaning that it deals with destruction and persecution, ultimately, though, leading to salvation and victory. We'll see that play out throughout the course of this book. Apocalyptic literature is also visionary, right? The guys who saw this, because John wasn't the only one, right? We also see a lot of these visions come forth in the book of Daniel, for example, and elsewhere in the scriptures. But apocalyptic literature is revealed through some type of vision. The important thing to remember with all of this, though, is apocalyptic literature all points to God's promises. It becomes the answer to all that's revealed in the Bible. It shows us this is God's plan all the way along. This is how He's going to try and save us, how He's going to save mankind. So, who was this book written for? Well, originally, John wrote this book for the 7 churches of Asia Minor. You can see them listed out there. Right, you've got Patmos, the island where he was imprisoned here off the coast of Turkey. Then you've got the cities of Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. These are the 7 churches that John was originally writing to, but the message that John sends them is still valid for the church today, especially with those dealing with problems and persecution, because it offers you hope. It shows you what God has in store for His church. Shifting gears again, there are 4 main themes of Revelation that we need to take a look at. The first one is Christology. Christology, obviously, is the study of Christ. This deals with the exalted reign of Christ, and we're going to see that happen in Revelation all over the place. We're going to see how it is that He deals with His ascension till His second coming. So we kind of get an idea of what's happening in heaven now, and what it is that's going to happen for us in all eternity. Another theme we're going to see is this idea of worship. One of the big ones is what we call the Te Deum, or the Great Hymn of Praise. The wedding feast of the Lamb is also going to be in there, so this idea of worship is all over the place. Again, we see this idea of preparation, how it is that the reader should be prepared for what's to come, and how it is that God is preparing the church to fulfill her mission. And finally, Revelation is shown here to encourage the church. During times of persecution, the church should take heart. During times of suffering, we should not be dismayed, because we have salvation in store for us. The future is coming. Christ is coming back soon. So putting all these pieces together, we got to take a look at the structure, and that will set us up for diving into the text itself. So how is this book put together? Well, the book of Revelation is divided into 3 sections. The first one is the prologue, where John gives us an introduction about himself, kind of an idea of what's going to happen, and we get the letters to the 7 churches of Asia Minor. From there, John transitions into his vision. The vision John sees is a single vision that's repeated 3 different times. That's the reason that this book is called Revelation, not Revelations. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. One of the things I try to press home on the students that I have is that Revelation is a book about one vision repeated 3 different ways. Well, what was that vision? The first one we're going to see is the vision of the 7 seals. Then the 7 trumpets, right, is his second vision. Hopefully now you're noticing a theme. Then there's an interlude that goes in between the 7 trumpets and the 7 censers. Right, this interlude section deals with the warfare between God and the dragon, or God and Satan, as it were, and how it is that conflict is raging or has raged. And finally, we're going to be taking a look at this conclusion section. So the end of the world, the new heavens, the new earth, and how all of these things tie together. So that should set us up for taking a look at the text. Let's go ahead and jump into it.